Hello, Algebra 2. We are going to talk about section 7-4 today, nth roots. This is going to include square roots, cube roots, fourth roots, fifth roots, and we're going to talk about what that means. Our objective is to simplify roots and use a calculator to approximate roots. So we'll be doing both of those today. No previous sections, although this is going to seem pretty similar to some stuff that we've done with square roots, and it's going to seem really familiar from stuff that you did back in Algebra 1 and in middle school in pre-algebra, okay? This is just an extension of that. So, an nth root. What is that? An nth root is written this way: the nth root of some stuff. Okay, and if it's a square root just is like that. But if you start taking like a third root, or what's sometimes called a cube root, then we put a little 3 there, and that's how we know it's a cube root. Or we could do a fourth root, or a fifth root, and so on and so on and so on. Okay? One thing that you need to know is that if I'm taking, I'll put a little box here. If I'm taking, say, the fifth root of some number, then that is the same as that thing raised to the 1/5 power. If you're taking, let's say, the fourth root of something and then you raise it to something else, that is that thing raised to, in this case, the 3/4 power. Roots are fractional powers. That's what they are. Okay? So that will wind up helping us quite a bit in what we're trying to do here. Okay? So let's simplify some of these. Example 1, we just want to simplify here. And what we're going to simplify is the square root of 49 z to the 8th. Okay? And the way you do these is you have to know some stuff about how roots work. So when I take two things multiplied together, and this says 49 times z to the 8th, remember that's how you read that, you can break it apart into a bunch of multiplication of square roots, okay? So this can be called the square root of 49 times the square root of z to the 8th. And I think you'll find that, and this is true with all roots, as long as it's all multiplication, you can split it apart into as many pieces as you need to. So square root of 49, well, 49 is 7 squared, and I'm going to show it to you that way so I can talk about that. And then I want to talk about this square root of z to the 8th also. So square roots cancel squares. So if I have square root of 7 to the 2nd, square root of 7 squared, then the answer to that is just 7. Notice there's no square or square root. They cancel each other. Then I want to look at this, the square root of z to the 8th. Now that could be called z to the 8 over 2, because roots are fractional powers, and the square root means it's over 2. So that's 7, and z to the 8 over 2, that's 8 divided by 2, which is just 4. So it's z to the 4th, and so we get our answer like that. Okay? This is a pretty simple one. Let's look at a more complicated one. Let's look at example 2 here. We're going to simplify again. And this time we're going to simplify the negative cube root of the quantity 2a minus 1 raised to the 6th power. Okay, so how in the world do you do this? Well, let's use the fact that it's a cube root, that is, it's raised to the 1/3, and let's take this 6, and we'll leave the negative out in front, and we'll write this as 2a minus 1 raised to the 6 over 3 power. Now, 6 divided by 3, that's just 2. So it's the negative of the quantity 2a minus 1 squared. Now, what you cannot do is distribute here. For the negative, just leave that negative out in front. This is a perfectly good answer right here. Now, if we really wanted to, we could say, okay, that's the negative of 2a minus 1, or plus negative 1, times 2a plus negative 1 again. That's what 2a minus 1 squared means. And I could do the distribution on that. I could do 2a, I'm taking this and distributing it to each one of these. 2a times 2a plus negative 1 plus negative 1 times 2a plus negative 1, which is the negative of, and then I could do all these distributions here, 4a squared plus negative 2a plus negative 2a plus positive 1. And then I could simplify that to be 4a squared plus negative 4a plus 1. And then I could distribute that negative to everything and have negative 4a squared plus 4a plus negative 1. And that also is an answer. However, I want to point out that that answer is perfectly acceptable, and there's really no reason to have gone beyond that. Okay? So that's the real simple part. I'm going to give you some problems to work on out of the study guide, but before I do that, I want to mention a site, Desmos.com. Desmos.com is a place where you can use a graphing calculator. You can use it as a regular calculator. If you use Desmos as your calculator, you want to use the abbreviation square, get square root like that, and the square root symbol will pop up. Okay? Otherwise, if you need to do, say, the cube root, don't write it that way. Instead, you need to write whatever you have, use the caret to make it a power, and make it to the 1/3 power. And that's how you'll do that in Desmos and in your calculator, actually. In a calculator, usually the square root symbol is there, but other nth roots are not. So if you were to do, for example, this will be example 3, we're going to approximate the following. The fifth root of 18.2 to 3 decimal places. Okay? And so instead of trying to put this into a calculator, not really going to find many calculators that can do that. Instead of doing that, you do 18.2, the caret symbol, and then you probably need parentheses in most of them, and 1/5 in the parentheses. Now, a lot of calculators will then show you that this is the same as writing 18.2 to the 1/5 power. So if you have a calculator that shows you that, then that's what you want. And then you just hit enter. And if you round it to 3 decimal places, you should get 1.787. So I'm going to give you a few to try like that, but I'm much more worried about the other part of it. All right? So try the problems that go with the assignment, and I will talk to you later. Thank you.